I started last year in pretty good shape and then finished it in less good shape. So since January, I've been trying to get a grip on that, and I've made a couple of videos on various things that I do to try and reduce the impact that my poor diet choices have on me, because that's entirely what it comes down to, diet.
My self-control issues when it comes to bad food just override common sense completely.
But no solution is perfect, no body is perfect. If you battle with these issues, the battle is ongoing. And so each time I come up with a new thing to try or a new approach that seems to be working for me, I like to cover it here just in case others find it beneficial. I think it's also useful to highlight that somebody who is on the surface fit and healthy and has a degree of sporting performance can still struggle with their food. Based on feedback, that seems to be helpful for people in the same situation to know that they are not alone, and sometimes helpful for people not in the same situation, but with thoughts as to why those who are in that situation struggle.
And it's only your fault if you don't hate yourself enough to do something about it.
Because if they've misunderstood the cause behind behaviours that they see in somebody else, then they might have more negative interactions with that person than necessary. So if all this video does is prevent person A telling person B that the solution to all their diet problems is don't be lazy, don't be stupid, eat less, move more, problem solved, then good. Having said that, I don't know if my mum watches my YouTube videos, so I might have to put up with being called lazy and stupid for a while yet. In case you've not seen my previous eating problem videos, let me explain my issue. It's binge eating.
There were 2 bars. I did have one for lunch.
But first, like everything on this channel, it's about me and what I am doing. I'm not an expert, I've got no training, no qualifications. Will anything that I do be beneficial to you? No idea. I've got no app you can download, I've got no training plan you can sign up for. It's just me saying, this is what I do. Binge eating is not having a little too much cake now and then. It's not just overindulging. And importantly, doesn't necessarily lead to any obvious physical signs. For example, someone who never binges but every day does eat a couple of hundred calories more than they need will eventually become obviously overweight and have their physical abilities impacted by that. I can binge on thousands of calories, wake up the next day, go run a race, look fine, perform great, and happily slap a photograph on Instagram where people will then say, yeah, looking pretty good, oblivious to the fact that 12 hours before I was knee-deep in Doritos. So binge eating is defined as being an eating disorder where symptoms are things like eating when not hungry, eating very fast, doing so alone or secretly, and feeling negative during and after the eating experience. Is that me? Yeah, tick them all off. So this is not an extra serving of dessert when you know you shouldn't. It's not the whole tube of Pringles while watching Netflix when you probably should have stopped at halfway. This is eating so much that you are full, certainly no longer hungry in the slightest, maybe feeling quite unwell because of how much you've already eaten, not wanting to eat another thing. And then downing an entire bar of cooking chocolate because it's the only thing left in the house at 1 AM that you can eat, and just hoping that no one notices. It is nothing to do with being greedy or lazy or stupid. I'm none of those things, but I've had to reach Winston Wolfe levels of evidence removal expertise due to the amount of cooking chocolate wrappers that I've needed to discreetly dispose of.
I solve problems.
Simply, it is your brain telling you to do something that you wished it wouldn't. And for anyone thinking, well then it's just about willpower and overcoming that urge, okay, and where do you suggest that willpower is obtained from? Because we've already established that the brain is not on board here. Unless I can conjure up willpower from my appendix, I'm going to come up short at 1 AM. I should also add, binge eating is not controlled excessive eating. I've done a couple of challenge videos where I've eaten large amounts of food and people have said, well, does that not cause a problem for you? In fact, is it not a problem in itself that you're doing that? No. When I'm doing that as part of a challenge, I am completely in control of what I'm doing. There is no unregulated compulsion. It never leads to any ongoing issues. If anything, it's actually a nice reminder to me that I am able to exert a degree of discipline over what I do.
Moist on the inside.
Now, you can certainly argue whether it's healthy or wise or safe, but you could do the same with base jumping or free solo climbers. It probably does have a degree of stupidity attached to it, but it's very separate to my disordered eating. So what is the impact all that has on me? Well, for many years, I did no exercise, and the way I would eat on good days was pretty poor as well. So that, combined with the binge eating episodes being very regular, just caused me to suffer from a massive calorie surplus on average. And therefore I just ended up very heavy. Nowadays, I exercise a lot and good days are good. So the impact of a binge of 4,000 or 5,000 calories one evening can actually be largely negated over the course of a normal week. My average calorie consumption not necessarily in surplus at all, making me a high-functioning binge eater. However, I say largely negated. It is obviously hard to maintain a calorie deficit with binge eating episodes happening because it's just not possible to lose both the binge calories and the regular calories required to achieve a negative calorie balance over time. So I can get in reasonable shape, but not great shape. And to a certain extent, that's okay. Being in great shape doesn't actually matter too much. I can do the things I want to do as well as I want to do them. Despite what social media will tell you, having single-digit body fat and a year-round six-pack is neither necessary nor the pinnacle of fitness that some people would say it is. So is it a healthy state to be in, binge eating? No, but it's better than I was and I cope. So if that's the case, if I can cope, why do I even need to explore options and techniques to fight against these compulsions beyond the ones that I use already and have spoken about in previous videos? Well, simply because I don't want to become complacent. In the past, my health has been appalling as a result of my weight and eating. So I'm well aware how bad things can be. Just because all is okay right now, it would be foolish not to stay vigilant of the situation. And if I have a behavior or a circumstance that can be tweaked to make a binge less likely, then why not try that? So before diving into the changes I've made that have had good results so far this year, let me explain the 3 states that I exist in. Sometimes I can be on the beach. I know with certainty I'm not going to have a problem with a shark stood on the sand. That state can last a few days or many months. Throughout it, I will just know that I am safe. When I first started losing weight, I was there 99% of the time for years. And in a way, I'm very lucky because I know how to be on the beach. And not everyone with an eating disorder is so lucky. The trouble is, it's boring for me. For me to be on the beach means living a very simple and structured life, the same meals over and over, the same workouts, no particular goals to hit or targets to achieve, just existing in a state of slow and steady improvement. Now, to get from 350 pounds in my worst state to no longer liable to have a heart attack, it was necessary. But to spend all my time on the beach now, that's not really my cup of tea.
I'll never put on a life jacket again.
Then there is in the ocean. Potentially no problem and actually a lot of fun. It's where my day-to-day routine is varied. My goals and objectives are regular and defined. I have a lot going on. Everything is, on the surface, great. But I am very aware I may fall prey to the 3rd state, big ass shark attack. That could be a minor incident, a one-off with no real lasting damage, or full-on Jason Statham disaster. I can eat a staggeringly large amount of food when it goes wrong, and it can go wrong very quickly. And I'm talking staggering, thousands and thousands of calories. As one example among many, at one point last year I went to my local shop to buy some snacks. Despite already feeling very full, it's a 5-minute walk to get there. On the journey home, I ate 4 marzipan bars, 2,000 calories in total. When I got home, I then ate the snacks I'd bought. The marzipan bars, nothing more than a nibble to get me home. 7, 8, 9, 10,000 calories on a bad day, quite possible.
Ugh, I'm in trouble.
So why am I affected by disordered eating? I have no idea. I know some people have issues around negative events in their life that are outside of their control, causing poor eating to take place. And that sounds really tough because if your ocean is bad luck happening to you, you really have no control over when you find yourself treading water waiting for sharks. For me, I'm glad it's the way it is. I know and can always revert to super tedious structured monotony, and I'm safe on the beach. I can get out of the ocean. But I like the ocean, so my challenge is staying in it, but safe. So here's what I've done and what's worked really well, and seems to have a possible positive implication beyond the food one. I've actively tried to reduce the emotional and mental peaks and troughs in my fitness calendar. Basically, I wanted to dampen down the significance any one event has. What I found over recent years was that I would set a target, have a goal, maybe a certain time in a Spartan race or complete a particular endurance challenge, and I would fixate on it. It would become of huge importance to me. And that might seem normal, a good thing even. Everyone knows someone that's training really hard for a particular event they're working towards. The problem is this: I'm not an elite athlete. In many of the things that I do, I'm not even a very good athlete. So my performance doesn't really matter. It's not my job to do well. I don't make money beating other people. It's all just hobbies, which are cool, but at the end of the day, not actually that big a deal. In theory, I am only human and male, so I do find it hard to not set myself a challenge and then go after it. And of course, that's now compounded by YouTube because setting challenges is just part of what I do for content. And I was finding that I would wind myself up as an event approached, physically and mentally. I would target fixate. It became a big thing in my day-to-day life that this goal was looming. That state of being wound up would rise and rise, and the wound upness scale would just go through the roof, and then something would cause it to crash. Not necessarily in a negative way. I may complete the challenge and do very well, but still the wound upness would crash afterwards. That is not about good or bad performance. It's just about that target that I'd been fixated on suddenly just disappearing and leaving a hole. So at the start of this year, I found myself looking back at last year and realizing that after every peak came this trough that coincided with a series of poor eating choices. High Rocks London did great, then had problems. Ultramarathon got crushed, still had problems afterwards. It wasn't how I did in the event, it was how big a deal I made of the event, and therefore how big a deal the post-event dip became in my head. So I actively made a change this year to try and diminish those peaks and troughs in the hope that a more stable, wound state would improve things. And it has been hugely successful. I am steadily reducing body fat levels, feeling great, performing great, and eating issues are not gone, but sporadic and minor when they do occur. And the best thing of all is that, eating issues aside, I'm looking forward to the rest of this year in a way that is genuinely taking me by surprise and has led me to think that even for people that have no food concerns, this might not be a bad approach to consider anyway, especially if you're somebody easily wound up by your goals. And although your fixation on a target might not have any eating implications, it might impact on the time you spend with your family or how sociable you are to be around. The Instagram ideal of somebody involved in fitness needing to dedicate every waking moment to self-betterment and target destruction might be a current trend that is applauded, but the reality is that you have a lot of normal people with normal lives and spouses and children and pets and mortgages. Simply put, Margaret in accounts isn't David Goggins and shouldn't feel too bad that she acts like she knows it.
Stay hard!
So here's what I did. 2 steps. Number 1, I did what I could to take the peak off of the peaks. And then number 2, I added in additional events or gave things that I wouldn't traditionally regard as an event elevated importance in order to fill in the troughs. I now have numerous goals on which I focus much more lightly and have little time in between to experience any real dip at all. Although it looks like a far more exhausting time with lots going on, by reducing the volatility of my focus, it actually means that I feel fresh and consistently ready for anything. So some practical examples of how I did that. High Rocks in January. I knew at the end of last year that my performance was going to suck, but that I'd probably try and crush it anyway. It would inevitably have become a big focus. So I ran it in a weighted vest, did it for charity. I destroyed any chance I would have of doing well in the traditional sense, and that leveled that peak right off. I went into that event more mentally relaxed than any I've ever done before. I then wanted to get my parkrun time down. I had a wild ambition to try and get it below 19 minutes. Bear in mind, back at Christmas, it was around 25. But rather than go and do a parkrun once every 1 or 2 or 3 weeks and try and hit a great time on my way to sub 19, I just set a really quite boring target to run well within my means each week, even if that meant running much slower than I was capable of. So I was never anywhere near my limit, never felt I'd pushed myself to something incredible. I just went along, sort of out of habit really, and just ran, almost without me noticing. I'm now just a few seconds off 19 minutes, and again, super relaxed about it. Here's a current example. I'm doing High Rocks in a couple of days' time. I'd like to get about a 1 hour 20. That will be absolutely fine in my long-term quest to do well come November, when I'm in the 50 plus age category for the first time. Right now, doesn't need to be better than that. And I might not be anywhere near that good. I might run 1 hour 40, 1 hour 50, who knows. But I do know, if I run a 1 hour 15, 16, 17, I'm not crossing the line until just under 1 hour 20. Just like parkrun, I'm going to clock a perfectly respectable time at best that will leave me thinking, yeah, cool, what's next? Rather than the I've done it elation that I had when I first had a podium in High Rocks, which was then followed by binge after binge. In fact, that podium was probably the start of last year's decline. So I'm treating goals and targets as just a little less important than I might have done in the past, because they are a little less important than I would have considered them in the past. For example, if I never do get under 19 minutes for a park run, really, who cares? And then probably the biggest thing has just been flooding my time with stuff. I simply have so much going on that I have given mental priority to that nothing really stands out. After High Rocks this weekend, I've got a 10K at Dorney Lake. After that, Jen and I are running another run with the dogs. Then we're in New York for another High Rocks again. No huge ambition to go crazy quick there, more just looking forward to running around Central Park, to be honest. After that, gravel bike race, and I've got a long distance bike ride. In between, my park run objective is still being worked on. And if you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, these are all well and good, but not everyone can just afford to enter a different event every week. It's not just about sports events. Jen and I have sat down and worked out a whole bunch of DIY tasks that need to get done in the house. Last weekend, I smashed a hole in the wall to make a hatch for Lincoln to access his bed under the stairs. And again, it's just about giving that importance. That job wasn't something in the way of me getting an Instagram-worthy sporting result that weekend. It was a cool and important thing in itself. So when I get asked, what event are you most looking forward to? The answer is none of them and all of them. I wake up every single day just looking forward to lots of stuff to get done, but nothing in particular jumps out. And I've had probably the most consistent 4 or 5 months that I can remember in a long time. And some people won't get that. I understand that. They enjoy focusing on one goal, whether it's a fast 5K or entering their first marathon or doing an Ironman, whatever. They are happy for that to be all-consuming. That's amazing. I'm a bit jealous, but I know that just doesn't work for me. And that is it. It's what's working for me right now. It's keeping me motivated at an appropriate and sensible level, seeing consistent improvement, but hopefully in no danger of the peaks and troughs. At least not ones created by my own imagination. Will it work for anyone else? No idea. Will it still work for me in 12 months? No idea. I just know right now I'm in the ocean, but I'm also confident that I'm very unlikely to get hit by a shark attack. It's a state of mind equivalent to swimming safely off the coast of Skegness instead of risking life and limb swimming in the shark-infested waters of Australia. Although that analogy makes it sound a bit rubbish, so imagine how bad it would be to swim in Australia but then eat huge amounts of bad food. Which also sounds better. I need to work on my analogies.